Welcome to the Stewart Sports High School Football Podcast. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Really excited this week because we kick off our GPB Sports Football Fridays in Georgia schedule this Friday night with a great rivalry game. It's a special game, one that has always been very exciting on GPB as the defending 3A state champions and second-ranked Calhoun Yellow Jackets play the 4A second-ranked Cartersville Purple Hurricanes at historic Weinman Stadium. And that'll be Friday night, 7:30 on GPB. Invite you to join me along with my color commentator, Wayne Gandy, one of the best in the business, Auburn Tigers All-American, 15-year pro, first-round draft pick in the NFL by the LA Rams. You can't get much more of an expert than Wayne Gandy. And, of course, John Nelson on the sidelines and our illustrious producer, Glenn Diamond. So join us on Friday night, 7:30 on GPB as Calhoun takes on Cartersville in our first GPB Sports Football Fridays in Georgia game of the week. Looking forward to that. And, of course, it's a double week for me because I kick off my college football schedule. Did not have a game the first week of the season, but this week I will have the Georgia State Panthers playing host to the Memphis Tigers at Center Park Stadium. You might remember it as the old Turner Field, and that'll be on Saturday night at 7 o'clock on ESPN+. Obviously, the Panthers with a lot of work to do after they went on the road and played at Ole Miss. They were obviously, overwhelmed from a talent standpoint by the SEC Rebels. And this week won't be a whole lot easier. Memphis is really good, too. They opened with a win over Chattanooga this past weekend. They were 11-2 last season. So Memphis at Georgia State, that'll be my Saturday work, and I invite you to join me for that, along with Sam Crenshaw on Saturday, 7 o'clock on ESPN+. So looking forward to a big week of football for me, high school football and college football. Coming up in this week's podcast, we're going to visit with North Gwinnett head coach Eric Godfree, great guy. Of course, he played at Parkview, then coached at Parkview a couple of years ago, made the jump to North Gwinnett, and continuing his successful run there with the Bulldogs. They had a big victory over Colquitt County this past week, and we'll be talking about that. Plus, taking a look at his team. He's got some uber-talented players, including his son, Jake Godfree. Also going to take a look at our 5 biggest wins of the week. Going to take a look at my players of the week and look ahead to the top games to watch this Friday night. Of course, we had a great first weekend of college football. I love college football, obviously. Who doesn't love college football? First weekend was very exciting. And the thing that also makes college football exciting for me, when I do get the chance to just sit at home and watch games, that's not always the case because a lot of times I'm working. But one of the things I really love about college football is being able to sit there and watch former Georgia high school football players just have a big game. I mean, these are guys that we watched on Friday night, and now they have graduated on to Saturday. Some of them will graduate on to Sunday. And just a sampling of some of the great games that we saw this past weekend, starting with former Parkview Panthers wide receiver C.J. Daniels. And we're going to talk to Coach Godfree about this because he coached Daniels in high school at Parkview. What a game Daniels had in Miami's 27-24 victory over Notre Dame. And Daniels started his career at Liberty, then he was at LSU, and now he's at Miami for his final season. And it looks like he had the catch. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go and look. I mean, he had the catch. I mean, it was a full Odell Beckham-style touchdown catch from Carson Beck in that victory for the Miami Hurricanes. So watching C.J. Daniels, that was special. Watching, of course, Gunnar Stockton, kind of forget about Gunnar Stockton, but this was his first start for the Georgia Bulldogs between the hedges. So Gunnar Stockton, of course, one of the most decorated and successful high school football quarterbacks in Georgia high school football history when he was at Rabun County. Threw for over 13,000 yards, rushed for over 4,000 yards, a true dual-threat quarterback at the high school level. And it looks like Mike Bobo is going to utilize that. And I think that's great for Georgia. I think he's got a chance to do for Georgia what Riley Leonard did for Notre Dame last year. We saw what Riley Leonard did it to the Georgia Bulldogs in the quarterfinals. So I think Gunnar, if they utilize his legs the way that he can run, I think that's going to be big for Georgia. And you saw it. He had over 70 yards rushing. He was the leading rusher for the Bulldogs in the victory over Marshall. I know some people hit me up on social media, on Twitter in particular, and said, slow down, it's Marshall. Yeah, but that's who they were playing. He can't have a performance like that against LSU if they're playing Marshall this week. So you got to take it for what it is. And I was really excited what I saw from Gunnar Stockton. Of course, there's going to be bigger stages and bigger games for Gunnar, but I thought his first outing, his first start for the Bulldogs, tween the hedges as the number one guy, not because of an injury, but the number one guy. I thought it was really good. So Gunnar Stockton, of course, a guy that we watched over the weekend. How about App State? I mean, my goodness, that App State football team is basically a Georgia high school football all-star team. Great to see A.J. Swan there. You might remember him as a star quarterback at Cherokee, and then he went to Vanderbilt. He had some success there. Then he transferred to LSU and basically was a backup there. And so now he's at App State. And I've said this before. I think he's got a chance to do at App State what another former Georgia high school football quarterback did. Chase Bryce, you might remember him at Grayson. And then he went to Clemson. He was a backup there. And then he went to App State and became a star there. And I think A.J. Swan's got a chance to do that here with the Mountaineers. He was the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Week, threw for 368, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. 6 of his pass completions went to another former Georgia high school football star who was making his App State debut, and that was Jaden Barnes, who started Langston Hughes and had been at Austin Peay, so he takes the bump up. He goes from Austin Peay to App State, has a huge game in his first game with the Mountaineers. Also, Alex Sanchez, a true freshman from Grayson, he had a touchdown catch in that game. And then Rashad DeBinion, you might remember him on those great Cedar Grove teams a couple of years ago, and he had been at Arkansas. And so he transfers to App State. He runs for over 130 yards in that game. So Rashad DeBinion, another former Georgia high school football star, doing great things with App State. And then on defense, Kevin Abrams-Verwain, former Marietta defensive lineman. He's there at App. He had a big game. Thomas Davis, former linebacker at Lowndes, started his career at Miami. Now he's at App State. He had a big game. So if you want to watch a bunch of former Georgia high school football players play on the same field at one time in college, just watch App State play because they continue to load up on that. That was first-year head coach Dow Loggins. He came from NC State where he was the OC, and now he's a head coach for the first time. So congratulations to him. He got the debut victory. And it looks like, App State has always lived in Georgia. They've always done a great job of recruiting the state of Georgia, and that doesn't look like that's going to change under their new head coach. Another guy, if you might have missed it on Sunday, Bakari Swain, star at Central Carrollton, he had a huge 80-yard punt return touchdown in South Carolina's victory over Virginia Tech. It was a big one, came in the second half. I wouldn't say it was the backbreaker, but it was huge, and it gave some separations to the Gamecocks as they went on and beat Virginia Tech at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So that's another former Georgia high school football player, had a big week. And Justice Haynes, who's now at Michigan, he scored 3 touchdowns in their victory over New Mexico. You would expect the Wolverines to win that game. But I bring up Justice Haynes because we remember him from BT and Buford. He went to Alabama. Now he's at Michigan. So good luck to him. And, of course, that's college football. And now this week we'll add NFL to the mix as well. And there's a bunch of former Georgia high school football players in the National Football League as well. And we'll wait and see what they do here in week 1 of the professional season. So like, follow, and subscribe to the Matt Stewart Sports High School Football Podcast. You can watch it on YouTube. You may be watching it on YouTube right now, or you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple, or iHeart. Whatever you do, like, follow, subscribe, and tell a friend about it. Let's start the podcast here, really get into it with the 5 biggest wins of the week. And we'll start with number 5, Blessed Trinity beating Prince Avenue 28-13. These are 2 of the powers. Private powers. Of course, BT doesn't play in that private class. They play in 4A. And I think I have number 5 in my rankings this week. And by the way, I'm not going to go through the rankings this week, but because there's so many of them. But if you're interested in seeing my rankings, I've already put those out. I put those out before the podcast. I usually put those out on Sunday. So you can go back into my timeline on X at Matt Stewart TV, or you can go to my Facebook page, Matt Stewart Sports. And I've got them all there, too. You can check out all the rankings. But BT, a 28-13 win over Prince Avenue. Almonte Pitts, 20 carries, 162 yards rushing. MJ Kraft, 73 yards rushing for the Titans in that victory. He scored 3 touchdowns. And DJ Jacobs had 2 quarterback sacks. If you don't know about DJ Jacobs, you need to know about DJ Jacobs. He is rated as high as the number 1 edge rusher in the class of 2027, plays for Blessed Trinity. He is the son of former Georgia Bulldog David Jacobs. Number 4 on the list, how about Sequoia's 37-6 win over 4A number 3 Kell? I mean, they just demolished the Longhorns. Will Rajecki, Memphis commit, 197 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. Leif Hansen kicked 4 field goals, including a 45-yarder. And the Chiefs' defense had 3 interceptions in that game. Sequoia just overwhelmed Kell. I was totally surprised by this. Of course, Sequoia's a 5A, and Kell's a 4A. But to me, that doesn't explain the 37-6. I mean, Sequoia just laid it to them. And I know some people hit me up on Twitter on that. Why isn't Sequoia in my top 10? Well, the problem with my top 10 this week in 5 is nobody lost. I mean, Sequoia's right there waiting to jump in there, but nobody lost. And I didn't see anybody that I dropped out of it just because Sequoia had that big win. But trust me, as soon as there's an opening, if Sequoia keeps winning, they're going to jump in there. They had a great season last year and off to another great season this year. Number 3 on the list, North Gwinnett beats Colquitt County 21-7. And we'll be talking to Coach Eric Godfrey here about that victory in just a few moments. Huge win for North Gwinnett. And they're playing an incredibly difficult non-region schedule. So they open with Douglas County at Mercedes-Benz. They got beat. Of course, the Tigers are ranked as high as number 2. They're number 2 in my rankings. I think I got them ranked higher than anybody else right now. I got them number 2 in 6A. And they beat them 21-7. It got behind the 8 ball early in that game with some mistakes. They were down 14-0 early, could never catch up. Douglas County is just loaded with college football talent. And then they had a week off. And then you got Colquitt County coming to town. And they got a little history before Godfrey got there. North Gwinnett beat Colquitt County 19-17 in the state championship game. And then last year, North Gwinnett went down there to Moultrie and beat them 14-3. So this year, North Gwinnett gets them at their place, Tom Robinson Stadium there in Suwanee, and Bulldogs beat them again, 21-7 the final. Really did a great job defensively against the Packers and their star running back, Jay Lamar, 4-star who's committed to the Georgia Bulldogs. But more on that coming up in our conversation with Coach Godfrey. That's number 3 on my list. Number 2, now this might have been the biggest shocker of them all. Creekside demolished DeSoto, Texas, 70-28. What makes this astonishing is the fact that last year, Creekside went to DeSoto and got beat 70-0. So this time DeSoto comes to the swamp there in Fairburn, south of the airport, and the Seminoles hang a 70 on them this year. How about that? Gave up 70 last year, hang 70 on them this year. This Creekside team is for real. And again, some people hit me up on Twitter. Why don't I have Creekside ranked higher than number 3? Well, because I got North Oconee, defending state champions, number 1, and Cartersville, number 2. So Creekside there at number 3. Anybody can win 4. I mean, 4A is packed. I mean, you talk about a top 10 rankings in 4A. You got North Oconee 1, got Cartersville 2, got Creekside 3, and then after those guys, in no particular order, you got BT, you got Benedictine, you got Ware County. You got all these teams that legitimately can win a state championship and have in the last decade, all of them in those 4A rankings. So 4A is stacked. Creekside, though, can get there. Last year, if they got beat by DeSoto, didn't lose again until they lost in the state semifinals to Marist. So watch out for Creekside. They look really good. Caden Benson, you know, I love Caden Benson, all-state player. He made my, make that kid an offer all-state team. Caden Benson, here's a guy that, you know, Caden doesn't get a whole lot of recruiting because he's not a big guy. But he was 15 for 20, 233, 4 touchdowns, plus a rushing touchdown. Said Kelly had 146 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns as the Seminoles just rolled right over DeSoto, Texas. And this is a DeSoto, Texas team that some of the national rankings had them really high. I think they were number 8 in the Texas 6A rankings or 7A rankings, but they were high up there. But I don't know how good they are nationally. That was their first game, but wow, they got destroyed by Creekside 70-28. And number 1 on my list of biggest games is Grayson. What a schedule Grayson's played here to start the season. Last week, first week of the season, they beat Collins Hill in their revenge game. And then last week it was Rabun Gap. And then this week they got Thompson, best team in Alabama. Of course, the Grayson Rams, 6A defending state champions, and they have now won 17 in a row because they beat Alabama's 7A state champs, number 1 Thompson, 24-23. And not just the defending state champs, but the Warriors have won 5 of Alabama's last 6 state titles in the highest classification. I don't think that's ever happened in Georgia. You would probably have to go back to Valdosta back in the 1970s, and maybe they won the state championship in the state's highest classification 5 out of 6 years. They had some dominating runs back then under Wright Bazemore and then Nick Hyder. So it'd be interesting to see. But, I mean, the Warriors just run Alabama, and Grayson beat them. It's interesting, unique, ironic is the word I'm looking for. Ironic the way they beat them. Last year when they beat Thompson over there in Alabama, Grayson scored on a 2-point conversion in overtime to win it. This time, they stopped a 2-point conversion attempt by Thompson to win it. So Thompson was trying to turn the tables on them and beat Grayson in Grayson's backyard the same way Grayson beat Thompson in their backyard last year, but the Rams didn't let it happen. Stopped that 2-point conversion to get the win 24-23. And, it was their first game since they lost Travis Burgess, their all-state quarterback, 4-star committed to North Carolina. Burgess, done for the year for Grayson, injured his leg, and so he will not play again. Deuce Smith is their backup quarterback. I guess he's now their number 1 quarterback. He threw a game-tying 27-yard touchdown pass with 8 seconds left in regulation to force overtime. So like, follow, subscribe to the Matt Stewart Sports High School Football Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and iHeart. Time now to take a look at my Players of the Week. And I'll just give a little disclaimer here on my Players of the Week. I'm not looking for total stats. I'm looking for players who had big games against big-time opponents. So if your favorite player, your favorite team, you got 400 yards rushing against an overmatched opponent and your team won 70-0, that's not going to get Player of the Week. I mean, it's great. Pat on the back for sure. Pad the stats for sure. But yeah, I'm looking for guys who had big games against big-time opponents in games that they may or may not won had they not had that kind of performance. So let's start with quarterback, and a lot of great candidates to choose from this week, but ultimately I landed on Trey Smith of Roswell. He's committed to Furman. You talk about a little guy. Trey Smith, though, is so dynamic, underrated. There's no doubt about it. I think this guy's going to go off to college and have a huge, big-time career. But in Roswell's 30-28 win over Walton, 191 yards passing, 113 yards rushing, so over 300 yards of total offense, and 3 touchdowns. Trey Smith of Roswell is my quarterback of the week. My running back of the week, Amari Latimer of Sandy Creek, committed to Wisconsin. He had 30 carries, 212 yards, a couple of touchdowns in the Patriots' 23-7 win at LaGrange. Of course, I got Sandy Creek number 1 in 3A over the defending state champions Calhoun, who we're going to see this week on GPB. Sandy Creek, and expecting big things out of the Patriots this year. I got him number 1. Latimer's a big reason why. And he just ran over LaGrange. The Big Blue, the Grangers, has a big win on the road for Sandy Creek. Wide receiver of the week goes to Ty Kemp of North Hall. Had 8 catches for 177 yards, 3 touchdowns in the Trojans' 43-31 win over Cherokee Bluff. North Hall's a team that I don't hear a lot of people talking about North Hall, but I got them ranked number 3 in my 3A top 10. I think they're really good, and I think they've got a chance to make a deep run in the playoffs. Got to the quarterfinals last year. They could go even further this year, but Ty Kemp of North Hall is my wide receiver of the week, and their offensive line. The North Hall offensive line was an offensive line of the week. They had 503 yards of total offense, 315 pass, 188 rush in that win over Cherokee Bluff. That's a top 10 win over Cherokee Bluff. I think they were number 5 in my rankings going into that game. And that offensive line is led by 6'4", 270-pound senior offensive tackle Mason McGill, who is committed to Charlotte. Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, defensive line, we're going to go with defensive end Jordan Carter of Douglas County. He had 13 total tackles, 8 solo, 3 quarterback sacks in the Tigers' 27-21 win over Newton. Jordan Carter's just a beast. We're talking about a guy that's one of the top 5. I think it's top 5. He might even be top 3 edge rushers in the entire country. Jordan Carter, my defensive lineman of the week. Linebacker of the week goes to Brody Duffy of Roswell. That Duffy name is one that has just dominated there at with the Hornets over the last couple of years. He had a brother Ryder who was a big-time player as well. Brody had 14 solo tackles, 3 TFL, quarterback sack in the Hornets' 30-28 win over Walton. My defensive back of the week, Swainsboro safety Jaden Wilcher. He had 2 picks to go along with 4 total tackles. Also added a 37-yard touchdown catch on offense as the Tigers scored 22 fourth-quarter points and pulled away for a 44-14 win over Metter, a team that I had ranked number 2 in the single-A rankings going into that game. So congratulations to him. Kicker of the week goes to Balint Vorasmarty of Roswell. He's committed to Georgia State. He was 2 of 3 on his field goals, but he kicked a 26-yarder as the game ended, as time expired. And this is one of the real ones. This is one of the real pressure cooker field goals. It's hit it and win, miss it and lose kind of field goals, because it was a 28-27 lead for Walton, kicked that field goal. As time expired, Roswell wins that game. Balint Vorasmarty, I love him. He's got tremendous swagger. I had a chance to visit with him down on the field prior to one of their games last year. Just a real incredible kid. Got a lot of personality. He's my kicker of the week. Returner of the week goes to Rontre Welch of Carrollton. He had a 99-yard kickoff return touchdown in the Trojans' 28-21 win over Rome. And what was big about that kickoff return, aside from the fact it was 99 yards for the touchdown, it came right after the Wolves had scored and taken a 21-7 lead with less than 2 minutes left in the third quarter. And that kick return by Rontre Welch really kind of jump-started Carrollton's comeback as they rallied from a 21-7 deficit and won at Rome 28-21. And my punter of the week, I'm cheating a little bit here, and I'll explain in just a moment. My punter of the week is Jabois Smith of Swainsboro. Now, Jabois is a great player, but he's, punter is one of the things that people don't really talk about with him because he does so many other things well. He's a tremendous player, and he's going to play some other position in college football. He's not going to play punter, but he punts for Swainsboro. That's not unusual. When you got a great athlete on a team and you don't have a punter, that great athlete sometimes ends up being the punter by default, and he did a good job. He had 2 punts, 45-yard average. One of those ended up inside the 20. But like I said, I'm cheating a little bit because I just wanted to talk about the game that Jabois had outside of the punting. The punting was the least of what he did. He had 17 carries for 149 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, and then on defense had 10 total tackles and 1 TFL in that big win for Swainsboro over Metter. So Jabois Smith is my punter of the week. He's overall player of the week. You talk about a guy did it on special teams, did it on defense, did it on offense. What a week for him. All right, like, follow, subscribe to the Matt Stewart Sports High School Football Podcast. Time now to welcome in North Gwinnett head coach Eric Godfree. Coach, thanks a lot for being with us. Congratulations on the 1-1 season start.
Yes, sir. With our schedule, we're 1-1 is not a bad start.
Not at all, man. You're playing a brutal non-region schedule. You opened with a 21-7 loss to number 2 Douglas County, one of the most talented teams in the state, in the Corky Tell Dave Hunter Classic. Had a week off, and then you come back and you host Colquitt County, top 10 team in 6A. You beat those guys 21-7. And now this week you got a big rivalry game with another top 10 caliber team in Mill Creek. So give me your thoughts on the 1-1 start, the good and the bad, and also what are the chances that this game finishes 21-7 too?
Yeah, probably a good chance. That's what the good and the bad, like you said, and we lost a lot of offensive production. Most of our offensive production we had lost from the previous season. So getting those guys, clicking on the same page, felt like we were pretty well off, coming through the summer as much as well as we performed and competed, but didn't do as well as we wanted to in the bins. Had a lot of lack of focus, I guess, if you will, and so really harped on that hard for the week off we had, just talking about getting better, getting us better, and then of course in the preparation for Colquitt, and so offense did play a lot better come second half versus Colquitt, and the good is defense felt like we were going to have a good defense, and felt like we played very well against Colquitt defensively, and then felt like we played very well against Douglas County, the Benz as well.
You just put yourself in some bad situations in that Douglas County game with a fumble, and then turn the ball over. The ball's at the 1 yard line, and just a couple of easy scores put you behind 2 touchdowns early in that game.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's you look at the quick 14 they got from block punt, like I said, the 1, and then a turnover at the 33, and they had one really nice drive in the first half. But other than that, our defense did a really good job.
Good thing about it is none of that really matters because the region schedule kicks in, and that's what really counts. So these are great testing games. We were talking to Kareem Reed on the podcast last week, and he says, I don't like to play cupcakes because it gives you fool's gold if you get easy wins. Right. I'd rather play tough games to expose my warts. So I know what I have to work on to get better at for the games that really count, and that's the region.
Yes, yeah, and we're just like Coach Reed. Yeah, it was the exact same thing with us. If you play not a great opponent, you can get away with sloppy technique, you're doing very well, and then you carry that over to a good opponent and gets exposed. So we'd rather get exposed early.
So shout out to your defense, as you pointed out against Colquitt. You held those guys, high-powered offense, the 266 total yards, just 1 touchdown. You frustrated one of the best backs in the state, Packers 4-star running back and Georgia commit Jay Lamar. Your son Jake, of course, had a big game. We're going to talk about him in greater detail a little bit later on. But how about Ethan Robinson, your linebacker, Connor Coxwell, your defensive end, and safety Andrew Gist? All those guys had huge games statistically against the Packers.
Yeah, they really did, and beyond statistics, just as for what Andrew Gist did for us from the secondary, coming up, and how well he fit, and he made some big plays for us in the secondary as well. So yeah, Andrew Gist was one of our part of that game. We felt like he was one of the big elements in helping stop Colquitt right there. And like I said, and Connor's a great anchor for us on defense, and then Ethan, Jake's counterpart right there. I said having those two guys in the middle helps secure a lot of runs fits. And like I said, Ethan, he'll throw his body around and he gets his nose to the ball. And the guy loves football.
Sophomore Banks Holcomb had to carry the load for most of the game at quarterback after your junior Elam Ruckman was injured. Holcomb finished 7 for 14, 81 yards, couple of touchdowns. Where does this leave you at quarterback heading into week 3 against Mill Creek, and how much confidence did Holcomb instill in his teammates with his next man up performance against the Packers?
Yeah, and I love what you said of their next man up performance, because we talk about it all the time. You never know when your opportunity is going to be, and you better prepare like it's going to be that you're a starter. And Banks has continued to prepare that way, and the whole season we're looking at using 2 quarterbacks because we have two talented quarterbacks, and when Elam went down, like I said, Banks stepped in. Of course, very first play, throws a touchdown pass, it's a pretty special, and then comes out in the second half and does a great job. But I'd say Banks really grabbed the attention of our players when Elam was hurt for our spring game, and so he led us all through the Gainesville game, and Banks did a great job in that game as well for us. So our kids do have confidence in them, and we're happy to have 2 good quarterbacks. It's rare to have 1 good quarterback, so having 2 is pretty special.
Absolutely, because as you've already seen, and especially at 6A, which is as closest to college football as you can get in the state of Georgia playing high school football, you got to have 2 quarterbacks. You got to have multiple players at position. You got to have depth, and that becomes apparent every week when you play a tough opponent like you did this past Friday night, like you have all season so far.
Right, yes. No, you're right. We played 2 games, and Douglas County quarterback didn't finish a game versus us, and then Elam didn't finish a game for us in game 2. So here are 2 games, and two quarterbacks had to, go out for something, whatever reason. So and you said it, it's 6A football is as close to college football as it can get for the state of Georgia being 6A football.
Start of your third season with the Bulldogs after leaving your alma mater, Parkview, to take over the North Gwinnett program. You were 12-1 last season, got to the state quarterfinals. How tough was that move from Parkview, and is it finally getting a little bit easier? And is it tough because the fact that, a lot of times when you move out of state or you move to a different part of the state, you never see that team again. You play Parkview every year. They're part of your region.
Right. Yes. And, in our initial move, they weren't part of the region. But like I said, it was a tough move, knowing the talented team we had coming back for Parkview and all those, the players, and I'm a relational leader. So, me knowing the kids and the coaches and, very tough move, but also knowing, for my longevity and future, just what a special place in North Gwinnett is. And, Coach Bill Stewart and, Champito, our athletic director, were both, big parts in, explaining just what a special place North Gwinnett is. And sure enough, it really is. It's, I'll admit, just everywhere I go, is that first 6 months is really tough. Again, being a relational leader and knowing people and, knowing the cafeteria person and knowing, your janitors, all the little details of all the people that you get to know over time and care for. And then you step into a place that you know nobody. So it is tough. And then you're relearning kids and not sure, what makes them tick. And so, and it takes time to really get on kids and know, okay, what's going to shut them down, what's going to make them perform, what's going to motivate them, what's going to, so rebuilding all of that. And so to a point now, yes, North Gwinnett is home, and very glad to be here. And something even Jake had to start over. He knew everybody, and but he said if that's where God wants us to be, that's where we need to be. And so mature on his part. I was probably struggling more than he was. So.
That's such a great point that you make. Unlike the college head coaching job, where the head coach of a college program, the caliber of a North Gwinnett relative to a college, that would be like, I would say, an SEC program. The coach is like the president of the United States. He's almost untouchable. Unlike you guys at the high school level, you're right there every day. You're interacting with students, not just football players. You're interacting with other teachers, not necessarily guys on your coaching staff. So you're part of the community there in the high school program.
Right, absolutely. And really, I'm not saying this because I'm a head coach, but for all head football coaches there, and especially the state of Georgia, and people who love high school football, they really are kind of the face of the community. So when they walk in, and like I said, it's learning, who is in the community that you've got to be in touch with. Who's going to help your players in your program the most. Who do you know who's going to support you? Who do you know who might not support you? All of those different varying factors. And so it is interesting anytime you do change positions in that manner. And but I said I love it, and high school football is awesome, and the North Gwinnett community is really supportive, just as a whole. So that made that transition really easy.
You coach so many great players in your 9 seasons at Parkview. Of course, you continue to coach great players here at North Gwinnett. But got to ask you about one player in particular coming off the first weekend of the college football season, and the performance of your former wide receiver C.J. Daniels Sunday night in Miami's 27-24 win at Notre Dame. And, well, I guess what we'll call the catch, when he went full Odell Beckham on the Irish on his touchdown reception. Did you see that live? Obviously, you can't miss it now because it's all over the place on social media and on television, but just a phenomenal play, and good for C.J. Daniels finally,
Yes.
After being at Liberty and then LSU. And this final year at Miami looks like it could be a big time move for him.
Oh, absolutely. And I did get to see it live, and was going crazy. And of course, got the amount of texts that I received from former Parkview people and coaches, and just, even former Parkview people that I graduated with all the way back, just so it's pretty neat to see how many people are so proud of CJ. And of course, and right when it happened, that's what I told my wife. I said, that catch is going to be everywhere. Like that's a highlight reel that you can't ignore. And knowing CJ, knowing that those things that he would do in high school too, make circus catches, and he's and it's fun to me too. I get to brag on, I love bragging on our kids, and when people are asking about CJ, I said, yes, he's a phenomenal athlete. He's also a great kid. Such a great leader and a great person. So to see him do that he definitely secured a lot of time out here for on Miami. I don't see him taking him off the field anytime this season.
Oh, his combination there with Carson Beck looks like it's going to be gold for those guys. He was part of your semifinal team at Parkview, wasn't he?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, he was. Yep. Yeah, big part of it. Yes, sir.
So, want to talk to you about some of your current players now, and one in particular that you've known for a long time, and that's your son, Jake Godfree. From a recruiting standpoint, he's rated as high as the number 23 linebacker in 2027, has 40-plus offers, including Georgia Tech, Tennessee, and Florida State. Statistically, he's got 32 total tackles, 4 TFL in 2 games already this season, 239 total tackles in his career and 30 TFL. And he's got a long way to go in his career. What's that been like coaching your son? And also, what's it been like becoming a recruiting dad? Because now you have to deal with that angle as well.
Yes, and I'd say just talking about coaching my son is that's been a real joy and honor. And a lot because I leaned on people who have done it in the past and asked them, the goods and the bads. What'd you do right? What'd you do wrong? And so I'm very coachable myself. So I like to listen to wisdom and listen to smart people and want to replicate what they do. And so Jake and I have a great relationship, both on and off the field. Now I know I get on his nerves. I know I'm dad, so I'm sure a lot of things I say to him drives him crazy. He does a good job being respectful, and most of the time, sometimes we sometimes we get after it a little bit, but for the most part, it is very well in that end. And basically, what I tell all our kids and all of my kids from growing up is, if they work hard, be respectful, follow Christ, they do those 3 things, we'll be more proud of them than anything ever. They can make a B or a C, doesn't matter. Are they doing those 3 things? And like I said, he does those 3 things well, so very proud of him on that end. And then on the recruiting end, as you said, yeah. So I've helped. I asked some coaches about this that have had kids come through too after I started experiencing myself. So it seems like it's almost easier to help others' kids. When other kids, come up and ask you for advice, and I'm sending stuff out to college coaches and I'm bragging on our other kids. And so I feel like that's such a great job of helping my other players in recruiting. And then it came down to my own player and it's like my own kid. And it's like, well, yeah. And all of a sudden, the coach comes in, and one of the college coaches said, Godfrey, just talk about Jake like you do with all your players. Don't. Yeah, says I know he's my kid, and I don't want to like out, And so that was a good advice from the college coach. And then on the fact of, I don't want to, if I give Jake some advice and then that's not what he wants, or whatever that might be, it's almost different because he lives in my house. So that part of it has been different. And then also the road of balancing high school coaching and all the recruiting. We were at FSU last weekend, awesome weekend. This weekend we're going to SMU and Oklahoma in one day.
Yeah, I heard that.
Game and a 7:30 game, and just found out that Oklahoma has a college game day, so not how sure we're going to be able to park when we get there. But then we got to get back in for Sunday so we have Sunday meetings and getting ready for film and all that stuff. So definitely busy on that end, but at the same time, what an experience to be able to do. Wouldn't trade it for anything. It's gonna go by too fast. And as you said, Jake's career, he's really halfway through. He named all those stats, and he's got 2 seasons and 2 games. So he's still got a full season and basically 2 full seasons left. And I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. And then, of course, in the future, and we can talk about that later, of course, when it pops up, but like Greg Vandergriff and, his son Brock, and then he was at Georgia, and then he was at Kentucky. And when he got to Kentucky, he faced the challenges of trying to get to the games, to as many games as possible. And that required sometimes flights on Saturday morning and special accommodations. And so that's in your future as well, but that's a great thing to be facing in the future, no doubt. So
for sure.
Congratulations on all that. You've got a big-time All-State offensive lineman in Zachary Lewis, who's rated as high as number 29 offensive guard in 2026. He's committed to Georgia, so whenever, we say that perks up the ears of, about 85% of the state of Georgia is Bulldog fans. Georgia, of course, has a history of creating great NFL offensive linemen and high draft picks as well. Tell us about Zachary from your perspective, and do you see perhaps the same for him in the future?
Right. Yes. I'll tell you, Zach he's a tough football. Here's what's special about Zach. He's going into a sophomore season, and he's always been a defensive lineman. And we had a really good defense. We had an older, more experienced defensive line, and he was going to get some reps as a sophomore on defensive line. And we had a big need on the offensive line. And so we talked to Zach. Hey, Zach, you can be an everyday starter and play every play on offense. We'll eventually work you back over to let you play some defensive line. But this sophomore season, you can play every snap at offensive line. And he literally says, "Coach, I want to play football." Because he just loves being on the field and playing. And so sure enough, he comes over, plays offensive line, and then of course he starts getting offers and offers and offers to be an offensive line because he's a very athletic big guy. And then he finally got big enough to where, George's like, okay, you can hold this weight, your frame can hold this, and still be able to move and still be athletic. And so George came in and offered, and he's one who can possibly, at a center spot, at a guard spot, possibly play on Sundays.
Yeah. Well, good luck to him and best of luck. I mean, Al, that's a great story in that his willingness to help the team actually turned out to be a great blessing for him personally.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. That's what I love about that story and telling other kids. Yeah. Your willingness to help the team. Yeah. Turned out to just what you said, be a great blessing to him. Yeah.
Speaking of the NFL, and perhaps that's in the future for Zachary Lewis, you have a cornerback in Chauncey Davis who is committed to Southern Miss. His dad, Chauncey Davis, played in the NFL for 7 seasons as a defensive end, most of that with the Atlanta Falcons. And I don't think this is the first time you've had other, players of NFL dads or big time college football players. What's it like your experience coaching those type of players? And tell us a little bit about Chauncey on top of that.
Right, for sure. Yeah, like Chauncey. Last year had London Seymour, Richard Seymour's boy, and I'd say the great experience with the dads is, especially all the pro dads that I've met is, they're, "Coach, you got them. Hey, coach them up."
They're very hands off, right?
Yes, yeah, very hands off and not trying to control their kid, not trying to control a coach, not trying to, they've been there and done that and understand their kid is responsible for what he needs to do. Now there's, still supportive and there's something I can do to help him, there's something he needs to improve on, that kind of stuff, but not, they've been wonderful to work with. So going back to Chauncey is he is a big corner. He's physical. I see, in college, they might move him to safety. He can play an array of things in this, the secondary for in college next level. I think he can play safety. I think he can play corner. He can turn into an possible outside linebacker. Yeah, he's a very physical kid, strong, and pushes himself well. And so he's going to make a good big splash out there at Southern Miss, and very excited for his future. And I tell you, we count on him to do a lot of things for us.
I think he's chosen a great program too. I got utmost respect for Charles Huff, who is the new head coach there at Southern Miss. I think he's going to do great things, with that program. It's a program that has a good history too. So best of luck to him. I want to ask you about your junior tight end, 6'6", 240, Max Patterson. He's already got over 10 offers, the likes of Georgia State, App State, Wake Forest. He's your second leading wide receiver. Looks like the young man has a huge upside.
He really does. And I think before it's all said and done, he's going to be a big-time recruit. He was down at Florida State with us this past weekend, him and his dad and family. And, he carries himself well. He's very physical. He's finally put on size. When we were watching film, Mill Creek, in fact, just yesterday, we're breaking down film. We're watching him last year versus Mill Creek versus this year. And he has put on 20, 25 pounds since that time. He is really starting to develop and physically develop. So he's a problem for other teams. He stands at 6'6", and he's also athletic, and he's got big hands, and he's not.
Better watch out, or he turns into an offensive tackle. So.
Right? No, yeah, you're right. There's been a lot of those guys that go play NFL for 10 years at offensive tackle. Depending on how they continue to physically develop. So, being an athlete like he is and being that big, so. But he's gonna, like I said, he's a nightmare matchup for some teams, and we're looking forward to continuing to. And he's a constant worker, and he's very smart. He gets all of our schemes what we want to get done, and so he's a big help to our offensive program.
Well, you got Mill Creek this Friday night, rivalry game for you guys. Bulldogs lead the all-time series 14-4. You've split your first 2 games against Mill Creek since you've been there at North Gwinnett. After you lost to them in the Benz and the Corky Kell in year 1, you came back and got them last year 37-34. You know very well Mill Creek and Josh Lovelady. Personally, for you, going back to Parkview, this will be the 5th consecutive year you played them. Tell us what's the key to beating Mill Creek, and what's it like playing against a Josh Lovelady team?
Yeah, I'll tell you, he's one of the best coach. He is one of the best coaches in the state. His team's always well prepared, both sides of the ball, special teams, just everywhere. It's hard to get. It's hard to get big plays. It's hard to Offensively wise, they're going to control clock. They do a great job. If they have really talented players or not as talented players, they run outside zone as good as anybody. The way they scheme up their offensive line. So he does a phenomenal job, and so it's always fun, coaching against him, and knowing, okay, it's a tough task. Last year's game was one of the more fun games, more fun high school games that I've been a part of. It's a tight game all the way down to the very end, and so we know we got our hands full this week. So it's Creek Week here at North Gwinnett, and so big rivalry game, and so our kids really look forward to playing Mill Creek. And again, like I said, two programs that do it right, and so I love going up against a team like Mill Creek, knowing how well they're coached, and it's just going to be a interesting, fun game.
Well, best of luck against the Hawks on Friday night. And, Coach, thanks a lot for being with us here on the podcast. And look forward to catching up with you later in the season.
Yes, sir. Yep. Thank you so much. We appreciate you having me.
Always great to catch up with North Gwinnett coach Eric Godfree. What a super guy, and wish them well this season. And hopefully we catch up with them on GPB Sports Football Fridays in Georgia during the regular season and maybe in the playoffs too. But always great to talk to him. Like, follow, subscribe to the Stewart Sports High School Football Podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple, or iHeart. Please tell a friend about it. If you like high school football, it's good to listen to it while you're in your car driving to work or whatever. Just get caught up on high school football for the week. Let's take a look at the 5 biggest games to watch this week. And going to start with Mill Creek and North Gwinnett. We just talked about it there with Eric Godfree. And it's a big game. It's a rivalry game, no doubt about it. And just another in the long line, 3 straight really tough non-region games for the Bulldogs as they bring in Mill Creek. Mill Creek, of course, coming off a loss to Norcross a couple of weeks ago. So this will be a big one for Mill Creek. It's a big one for North Gwinnett because after this, they launch right into their region schedule, which will be Brookwood and then Parkview. And then on down the line, they got Norcross, which, of course, is probably, you're looking at those 2 teams, North Gwinnett and Norcross, that's probably the game to decide the region championship. We'll wait and see what happens, but that's number 5 on my list. Roswell at Buford's number 4 on my list. We already talked about what Roswell did with their last-second victory over Walton. Buford had the week off this past Friday night after opening the season with their big win over Milton and then going on the road and really beating a very good 4A Benedictine team in week number 2. And, of course, last year, Buford wiped out Roswell, a very good Roswell team, by the way. Beat them 52-17 at Ray Maina Stadium last year. So I know Roswell will be looking for revenge, but it's going to be hard to come by revenge with this Buford team. Jonathan Thompson, new head coach for the Hornets, so he wasn't there last year when all that happened, but now he takes his team over to Buford to play in the new stadium. So that's number 4 on my list. Number 3 on the list, Douglas County at Langston Hughes. Of course, we televised this game at Douglas County last year. It's always a great game. And a little bit different now that Daniel Boone Williams is no longer the head coach at Langston Hughes. Of course, he and Johnny White, the head coach at Douglas County, are tremendous friends, great friends. And he's now at Northside Warner Robins, but Enrico Hines has come in. And, of course, as I expected, Langston Hughes has not missed a beat. Number 1, because Langston Hughes is loaded with talent. And number 2, Enrico Hines, who was at Berkmar last year, but has a great reputation as an offensive coordinator, now as a head coach at Langston Hughes. So good for him, and they have not missed a beat. So Langston Hughes, I have them number 2 in my 5A rankings, will be taking on Douglas County, who I have number 2 in my 6A rankings. Number 2 on my list, Grayson versus North Carolina, Mallard Creek. Once again, Grayson playing out of state. This will be the 3rd consecutive out-of-state opponent they've played, and the 3rd consecutive out-of-state opponent they've played that's a big-time player, and that's Mallard Creek. They're number 1 in the 8A rankings in North Carolina, so they play Raven Gap. I know that's a Georgia team, but they play in North Carolina in the Independent North Carolina Association. And then they played Thompson, and now they got Mallard Creek, back to back to back. And you got to applaud Grayson for doing that. Grayson's You know what Grayson is, the defending state champions. Quite frankly, their region is not a test for them. There's one team in that region, all due respect to everybody else in that region. I'm just being truthful here. There's one team in that region who's got a shot at even beating them during the season. That's Newton. So you take a look at that, and they got to get ready. They got to get ready for the state playoffs, and it's hard for them to do that because they dominate that region so incredibly much that they're playing Mallard Creek. That's number 2 on my list. And number 1, of course, is selfishly, but I also think it's the number 1 game on the schedule this week. That's Calhoun and Cartersville. You see those Emmys over our shoulder. A couple of years ago, we won an Emmy for our coverage of that rivalry game. That was the last time they actually played at Weinman Stadium. And the last time they played at Weinman Stadium, it was a triple overtime game that Calhoun won 50-48. Last 2 years, Cartersville has won at Calhoun. And overall, statistically, Cartersville has dominated the series. I think it's 33-7-1 in favor of the Purple Hurricanes. But Calhoun, of course, the defending 3A state champions, had a great year last year. Got a great chance to repeat this year with Trace Hawkins, their 4-star quarterback, returning. He's just a sophomore, led him to a state title last year as a freshman. Jordan Beasley at wide receiver, Sager Quinn at defensive end. Calhoun's got a lot of talent. So does Cartersville with Brady Marchese, the wide receiver 4-star who's committed to the Georgia Bulldogs. So they got a lot of talent on that Cartersville team. So should be a fun matchup. And one other thing about that matchup, how good is Cartersville? Well, since 2020, they've had 1 regular season loss since 2020. And guess who that was to? It was to Calhoun, that aforementioned 50-48 game. So that's the top 5 games to watch on my list this week. Invite you to join us on GPB this Friday night as Calhoun plays at Cartersville, our first broadcast of the season. Of course, we'll be with you every Friday night from here on out, all the way through all the state championship games at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, as always. Join us on Friday night at 7:30 on GPB, and then join me on Saturday as Memphis and Georgia State play on ESPN+. Participate and be a part of my football weekend. Like, follow, subscribe. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Stewart Sports High School Football Podcast.